The Ashcraft family had dinner together every month. But these dinners were not really about enjoying food or spending time together. Most of the time, they were about showing off how rich everyone was. Each person tried to talk about their money, their houses, and their expensive things. Tonight's dinner was happening at the huge family estate near Napa Valley, and I already knew it would be another long and annoying evening. I sat in my usual chair near the warm fireplace and quietly watched my cousins talking. The fire crackled softly, and the long dining table was full of fancy dishes and sparkling glasses. But nobody was really paying attention to the food. They were busy trying to impress each other. "I just bought a ranch in Jackson Hole," Darian said proudly while slowly swirling his glass of wine. He leaned back in his chair like he was very important. "Please," Araminta said with a small laugh. She opened her shiny designer clutch bag and placed it on the table, so everyone could see it. "We just closed a deal on a vineyard in Tuscany. It even has private access to the Mediterranean Sea. The view there is absolutely priceless." Everyone around the table nodded and made impressive sounds. They loved these kinds of conversations. I quietly lifted my glass of iced tea and hid my smile behind it. If only they knew the truth. "Lysandra," Aunt Magnolia suddenly said loudly from across the table. Her voice cut through all the chatter. "You've been very quiet tonight." Everyone slowly turned to look at me. Darian leaned forward with a fake kind smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We were just wondering about your living situation," he said. And there it was. The question they always loved asking me. "What about it?" I asked calmly while placing my glass back on the table. "That tiny duplex in Portland," Darian said. "You're still renting it, right?" Araminta quickly added, pretending to be surprised. "The one on Alder Street?" I didn't know people our age still rented apartments. Some of them chuckled softly. I almost laughed out loud. The building they were talking about, the Alder Street complex, was actually the very first building my company had ever bought. They believed I was just a poor tenant living in a small rented apartment. But the truth was very different. I owned the entire building. "I like the space," I said simply. "You're 35 years old, sweetie," Aunt Magnolia said with a sweet but very bossy smile. "It's time to grow up and buy a real home." A real home? If they only knew. I owned buildings and properties worth more than $1,800,000,000. My company owned apartment buildings, tall office towers, and many other places across the region. And this very building we were sitting in tonight, Ashcroft Plaza, was also mine. 6 months earlier, I had quietly bought it through a private company that no one in my family could trace back to me. "I'm doing just fine," I replied calmly. Darian gave a small smirk. "You probably can't even afford a mortgage," he said. I leaned back in my chair and let them keep talking. I didn't feel the need to argue. Very soon they would discover the truth anyway. When the next lease papers arrived at their desks, they would see whose name was written at the top. Dad finally looked up from his wine glass. Now, Darian," he said in a relaxed voice. "Not everyone is blessed with your sharp business instincts." Lysandra chose her own path. Aunt Magnolia sighed loudly like she was deeply disappointed. She probably wished I had married a rich hedge fund manager or become a famous lifestyle blogger who posted pictures of luxury vacations. Everyone in the family believed I spent my days showing small apartments to struggling college students and earning tiny commission checks. What they didn't know was that the so-called family failure, Lysandra Caelis, was actually the founder of West Pine Holdings. West Pine Holdings was the quiet company that had been buying buildings and homes all across the Pacific Northwest for the past 10 years. Speaking of real estate, Araminta suddenly said with excitement in her voice, "Did you hear about that situation on Alder Street?" I looked up calmly. "No," I said. "What happened?" "Some big company bought the entire block," she said dramatically. "They're probably going to knock everything down." She looked at me with fake sympathy. "I guess that little apartment of yours will finally disappear." I kept my face calm and neutral. I was the company that bought the block. And I had absolutely no plans to destroy anything. The Alder Street building was beautiful. It had old brick walls, detailed windows, and lovely vintage designs from many years ago. Families had lived there for decades, and the building had rent protection for those longtime residents. Instead of tearing it down, I was carefully planning a respectful renovation that would keep the building's history while making it stronger and safer. "Really?" I said politely. "I hadn't heard that." "Of course you haven't," Darian said with a smug smile. "Deals that big are way out of your league. If you do lose your apartment," Aunt Magnolia said brightly, "you can always move back into our guest house. We'll help you find something more respectable," she added. maybe even a respectable husband. I'm happy where I am, I replied calmly. And so is my landlord. Araminta gave a tight little laugh. You can't live a small life forever, dear. The Caelis name used to mean something in this state. It still did, just not in the way they believed. In the world of real estate, the name West Pine had quietly become known for honest growth and fair treatment of tenants. It was the complete opposite of the flashy development projects my cousins loved to show off, the ones that destroyed neighborhoods just so they could build something shiny and expensive. Actually, Dad said suddenly while setting down his glass, this dinner meeting is partly about business. The board is worried about the new owner of Ashcroft Plaza. I tilted my head slightly but stayed quiet. West Pine Holdings bought a majority stake in the building 6 months ago, he explained. But no one knows who the owner really is. Probably some foreign billionaire, Darian said with confidence. Those tycoon types love buying old legacy properties. If only they knew that the mysterious owner was sitting right here at the table, wearing a simple sweater and worn boots. And now, Dad continued, they're asking a lot of questions, especially about our accounting practices. Creative accounting, like the way Darian quietly borrowed money from the building's maintenance fund to pay for his fancy ranch in Jackson Hole. Or the way Araminta listed her luxury handbags as client engagement expenses. I'm sure it's nothing serious, Aunt Magnolia said nervously while touching the pearls around her neck. The Caelis name still means something. That's exactly the problem, Dad replied. This West Pine owner doesn't seem impressed by family names. They've ordered a full audit. I watched their faces carefully. Their polite smiles stayed in place, but I could see fear slowly growing in their eyes. A full audit would uncover far more than they expected. Maybe Lysandra could help, Araminta suddenly said in a sweet voice. She works in real estate, doesn't she? Maybe she knows someone at the management company. Everyone suddenly turned their attention toward me. Just like that, I was no longer the family embarrassment. Now I was useful. I mostly work with smaller residential clients, I said smoothly. Nothing on the scale of Ashcroft Plaza. For goodness sake, Darian snapped angrily. You can't even help your own family. Mom gave him a warning look, but she stayed silent. Even Dad returned to looking at his phone. None of them defended me. None of them had any idea how helpful I was about to be. Just not in the way they expected. The very next morning, West Pine Holdings would release a public statement. Starting immediately, Ashcroft Plaza would undergo major operational reforms. No more secret budgets. No more family members giving contracts to each other. No more treating the building like it was their personal credit card. I looked around the luxurious penthouse. The paintings on the walls had been bought with money meant for building repairs. The couches cost 3 times their real price. The light fixtures had been installed by Araminta's husband's company with inflated invoices. Well, I said while standing up and brushing off my jeans, some of us have early mornings. Araminta smirked. Off to show more tiny rent-controlled apartments? I lifted my worn leather bag from the floor. Inside it were board reports, legal documents, and renovation plans worth more than everything in that room. Lysandra, Aunt Magnolia called sweetly as I walked toward the door. Next time maybe dress more like a Caelis. Appearances matter. I smiled politely. Don't worry, I said. Tomorrow I'll look exactly how the Caelis expects. They just didn't realize that I was already the one running everything. The next morning I stood inside my real office. It occupied an entire penthouse floor overlooking downtown Portland. Large glass windows showed the city stretching out below. Everything was ready for the moment I had been preparing for over a year. My assistant, Isla, walked in quickly and placed a warm cappuccino beside my laptop. The Ashcroft Plaza board is already seated, she said. Your family arrived early. They're trying to charm the independent board members. I smiled slightly as I imagined Darian and Araminta desperately trying to impress everyone in the room. The audit packets are printed and distributed, Isla continued. The forensic investigation team uncovered even more problems than we expected. She paused and looked at me carefully. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once they know the truth, there's no turning back. They need to learn something, I said quietly. That having a famous last name does not give someone the right to abuse power. I walked over to the glass window and looked at my reflection. Today I was not wearing jeans and a cardigan. Instead, I wore a dark navy Altazara suit. The clean lines and strong shape gave it a quiet power. It was the kind of outfit Aunt Magnolia once dreamed I would wear when meeting a wealthy husband. Instead, I would wear it to bring down their entire system of lies. The ownership announcement goes public in 20 minutes, Isla said. Once it happens, everyone will know you are the owner. Good, I said while picking up my briefcase. Let's begin. The Ashcroft Plaza boardroom became completely silent when I entered. My family was sitting together at the far end of the long table. They looked nervous, confused, and a little underdressed for the meeting. Who are you? Darian barked angrily. This is a private meeting. I calmly walked to the head of the table and placed my briefcase down. I'm Lysandra Caelis, I said. I am the founder and sole owner of West Pine Holdings. The company that owns this building and several others your family has been using in illegal ways. Aunt Magnolia turned pale like a ghost. Araminta opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father's hands tightened around the pen he was holding. Lysandra, he whispered. I nodded once. Good morning. I opened my briefcase and began sliding thick folders across the table. Shall we review your financial records? This is insane, Darian stammered. You're just what? I asked calmly. The black sheep of the family? The renter? The woman who wears second-hand clothes? Araminta blinked in shock. But you show apartments for a living. I work, I said simply. And I built something real with honesty and integrity. Not with illusion. The board members watched quietly as the proud Caelis family slowly began to unravel. One page at a time. These folders, I explained, contain detailed records of every misused fund, every inflated invoice, and every falsified receipt connected to Ashcroft Plaza. They were complete reports documenting the financial irregularities hidden inside the building's accounts. I began handing out the last group of papers to everyone sitting around the table. The room was very quiet. Everyone looked confused and nervous. They did not know what was inside the documents yet. I looked at Darian and spoke calmly. Darian, I said, would you like to explain something to us? Can you tell us why $2 million was used for roof repairs, but that money actually helped pay for your house in Jackson Hole? Darian's face suddenly turned very red. He looked shocked and scared. He started breathing fast like he might faint at any moment. Then I slowly turned to the next page of the papers. Araminta, I said, looking directly at her, maybe you would like to explain these invoices from your husband's company. Why did he charge 3 times more money than the normal price for simple plumbing work? The room filled with whispers. Aunt Magnolia suddenly gasped loudly. You would show your own family's dirty secrets like this? She said angrily. I stayed calm. No, I replied in a steady voice. You are the ones who made these secrets. I'm only making sure everything gets cleaned up. My father finally spoke. His voice sounded worried and tired. Lysandra, sweetheart, we can explain everything, he said. I raised my hand to stop him. Please don't, I said. I have spent many years watching this family treat our great-grandfather's hard work like a personal money machine. While all of you laughed at my simple lifestyle, I was quietly building something better. I looked around the table. I was building something based on honesty and values, not pride and showing off. Araminta looked very confused. She shook her head slowly. But why? She asked. Why did you pretend that you were struggling? I never pretended, I answered. I simply lived a simple life and invested my money wisely. You all believed that rich people must show their money loudly. Darian leaned forward slowly. The Alder Street building, he said with surprise. You really live there? I do live there, I replied. But I also own the building. Everyone looked shocked. And not just that, I continued. I own most of the buildings on that block too. Darian looked even more surprised. And no, I added calmly, I will not destroy the building for profit. Some people care about protecting homes and communities, not just making more money. At that moment, several phones around the table began buzzing at the same time. One board member looked down at his phone and began reading out loud. West Pine Holdings has revealed the identity of its CEO, he said slowly. Everyone stared at him. Lysandra Caelis, a member of the Caelis family, has been confirmed as the owner of a real estate company worth $2 billion. Araminta dropped her phone on the table. She's listed as one of the most ethical property developers, she whispered quietly. She protects historic buildings and supports tenants. Her face became pale. This will ruin us, Araminta said softly. I shook my head. No, I said firmly. This will save you from yourselves. Everyone became silent again. Starting today, I continued, Ashcroft Plaza will operate with complete honesty. There will be no more secret deals and no more special contracts given to family members. Darian tried to speak bravely. And if we don't follow your rules, he asked, but his voice was shaking. I smiled slightly. Then I will give these reports to the authorities, I said calmly. I'm sure the IRS would be very interested in reading them. The room became completely silent. Finally, my father spoke again. What do you want from us? He asked. I want you to remember something important, I said. I looked at each family member one by one. I want you to remember what the Caelis name once meant before all this greed began. Our great-grandfather built homes and communities for people. He cared about families, not just profit. I gathered my papers and stood up. You now have a choice, I said. You can work with me and help restore that legacy, or you can find somewhere else to live. I paused for a moment. I hear there are some nice rental homes in Lake Oswego. Then I turned and started walking toward the door. Lysandra, wait. My father's voice stopped me just before I left the room. I was wrong about you, he said quietly. I looked back at him. Yes, I answered softly. You were. After that meeting, everything changed very quickly. The news reporters loved the story. They talked about the quiet woman from Portland who secretly built a huge real estate company and revealed the truth about her own family during a single meeting. The story spread everywhere. Aunt Magnolia soon resigned from 3 community boards because she felt too ashamed to continue. Araminta's husband's business closed down only a few weeks after the investigation began. But not everything ended in sadness. Darian, after finally facing the results of his actions, decided to return to school. He joined a public university and started studying real estate. Araminta also changed. She began volunteering at a housing shelter that helped people who needed homes. Later she told me something interesting. Helping those families gave her more happiness and purpose than all her fancy gallery parties ever had. And my father came to me one day and asked if he could learn about the business. But this time, he was not acting like a father trying to take control. Instead, he came as a student who truly wanted to understand what I had built. 6 months later, I was sitting inside my apartment on Alder Street. Yes, I kept living in the same modest apartment. I was reading the newest business reports. Ashcroft Plaza was doing very well. The small stores on the ground floor were earning steady profits. The tenants were happy and satisfied. The community felt strong again. While I was working, someone knocked on my door. I walked over and opened it. Standing there was my mother. She was wearing simple jeans and had no makeup on. That surprised me because she usually dressed very formally. I received your invitation, she said, holding up the card. A courtyard holiday party. I nodded. It might not really be your type of event, I told her gently. She looked around my small apartment. No, she admitted. But maybe those kinds of things are not as important as I once thought. She noticed a photo sitting on my table. It was a picture of me when I was 23 years old, smiling proudly at my real estate license ceremony. I never asked you something, she said softly. Why did you choose this career? I thought for a moment. Because I wanted to build something real, I replied. I didn't want to simply buy things and show them off. My mother looked thoughtful. And now, she said slowly, you control more wealth than all of us. That's true, I said. But control is not the goal. What is the goal? She asked. Purpose, I answered. She looked at me seriously. Will you teach me? She asked. I smiled a little. Come to the party tonight, I said. Meet the families who have lived here for many years. Listen to their stories. That's where a true legacy begins. Later that evening I stood near my window, looking at the lights across the city of Portland. This city had quietly become my home. In the distance I could see Ashcroft Plaza shining brightly. It was no longer a place filled with greed. Now it has become a symbol of repair and renewal. Below me, the Alder Street building was full of life. The old brick walls and wooden beams had been carefully protected. The small garden courtyards were filled with people talking and laughing. My phone kept making small notification sounds. There were new partnership offers, invitations to speak at conferences, and many business proposals. Westpine Holdings had suddenly become very popular. But I kept my schedule balanced and my life simple. For me, success was never about proving I was better than others. Success meant building something meaningful that would last for many years. Sometimes the person people feel sorry for becomes the person others learn from. And sometimes the best victory is quiet. It simply lasts a long time. 1 week later, the Alder Street holiday party took place in the courtyard. I stood beside the garden fountain and watched everything around me. My family was slowly learning how to fit into this world they once ignored. My mother was sitting beside Mrs. Camila, who had lived in the building for 38 years. She listened carefully to Mrs. Camilla's stories. Darian was helping Mr. Harold hang lights across the courtyard. Mr. Harold was a World War II veteran and the oldest resident in the building. Araminta was laughing with a group of children while they decorated sugar cookies. Slowly, my family was learning an important lesson. Real wealth is not about showing off. Real wealth is about protecting what matters, sharing with others, and helping people grow. My father came and stood beside me near the table where people were drinking hot cocoa. "You know something," he said quietly. "Your great-grandfather always believed buildings should protect hearts, not just make money." I nodded. "I found his old notebooks," I told him. He wrote many notes about caring for tenants and protecting families. My father looked thoughtful. "We forgot those lessons," he said. Then he looked at me differently than before. Not like a daughter who had gone in the wrong direction, but like someone who had carried forward a torch that he had dropped. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "That was never my goal," I replied. I watched a little girl spinning happily under the glowing fairy lights. I only wanted to build something that would last longer than me. Sometimes the greatest success is not proving people wrong. Sometimes it is helping them discover a better way to be right.